What's going on, y'all? Ladies and gentlemen of the internet, welcome to the Bachelor Pad, Fortress of Solitude. I'm your host, Trevor, with Volition Games. And I had a topic regarding Magic the Gathering cross my mind earlier this week. I guess it was late last week, sometime in the last 7 days. Because I have been considering listing some of my inventory again for sale on TCG Player and eBay. And in order to do that, I've had to update a lot of my prices because the inventory has just been offline since June, late June. And obviously things have changed in the market. And so I had a couple of modern sets where I had a lot of commons and uncommons that I had to go through and figure out what was bulk and what I actually wanted to list and stuff like that. And it was striking to me that what I normally do is the threshold at which I will list a card is 25 cents. Sometimes 20 cents, but usually 25 cents. And it was remarkable the amount of cards that I was going through which didn't even meet that threshold. Now, obviously, that's always been the case. There have always been cards that are like, let's say, 15 cents, 12 cents, 10 cents. But the amount of cards that these days you can't even list for 5 cents. The market price on these things is like 1 or 2 cents. And we talk a lot in the online card selling community about the price of the big cards, that we see the decline in the prices for those big cards because of the reprints and stuff like that. But the bulk is also, it appears, seeing that same kind of decline. But it has to be for different reasons. So what could those reasons be? I have seen a lot of online chatter about people just saying, I'm getting out of Magic altogether. I see that a lot on the MTG Finance and on some of the Facebook marketplaces. People are selling out their whole collection and then just like, I'm just getting out of Magic altogether. I don't want to be a part of it anymore. And presumably that's the gyrations that are being caused by WotC that, are causing people to become disillusioned with the game and the ecosystem in general. Like there was that thing that just happened over the last few days where WotC apparently has the Ravnica Remastered listed on Amazon for like below what someone like Rudy is going to be able to sell the box for, so that stores can't even make any money off of it because their price would have to be higher than what it is on Amazon. So they're just fire selling this, and then the response from WotC when it was called to their attention that they were essentially fire selling Ravnica Remastered, which isn't even supposed to come out till January. Their response was, "Oops, that's a mistake. We'll look into it." Who's sailing the ship over there? So I don't think anybody has any real confidence in WotC's leadership right now. It's causing a lot of people to exit the game. And so when you have not just collectors exiting, but players exiting, because, for example, if they get cards which are valuable from a given set, they play with them for a while, and then they trade them in or sell them so that they can feed their hobby. The hobby essentially doesn't cost anything because you build up a reserve of cards that you can essentially snowball downhill when the next set comes out, then the next set comes out, then the next set comes out. And you don't really have to make a significant cash outlay because the hobby is essentially paying for itself. But when nobody wants to pay top dollar for what used to be a $20 card, now it's $8, that doesn't get you as far on that sort of trade-in strategy. So I think players are exiting the ecosystem as well. And that's really starting to tank the bulk prices. And so then, a card seller who's got, let's say, thousands of cards that they might offload to somebody who trades in bulk. First of all, what's going to happen to the business model that those bulk sellers online have? Is that even still going to be a viable thing? Are they still going to be willing to pay, as little as $5 for, 1,000 cards? Or is it now going to be $2? Is it going to be $3? Because instead of being able to sell 1,000 cards at an average of 10 cents a piece, now it's 3 or 4 cents a piece. So the fallout isn't from the ridiculous choices that WotC is making isn't just limited to the high dollar cards. It's going to have ripple effects through the whole ecosystem. So if you're one of those people who wanted to flatten everything just so everything would be cheap and accessible, well, good luck, because you're essentially destroying the ecosystem that you love, and that provides livelihoods in some cases for other people. I guess one of the other things that I wanted to sort of talk about was, as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm planning to start selling some of my cards because I do have a fair amount of inventory that I have in the other room, and I just need to move it somehow. I'm looking at potentially, liquidating what I can and getting into some other TCG because I like the whole, card collecting ecosystem. And there's a lot of new and creative card games that are coming out. Like I've looked at Flesh and Blood, and I actually have cards from a couple different sets. I mean, you can see Uprising right here. I just recently bought some cases from Rudy for the Bright Lights set. He had the Diamond Hands specialty card, which is really, really cool. I just got those in. So I'm thinking I may do a box opening or two related to Bright Lights and Flesh and Blood. That's something that I'm sort of looking at just from a collector's perspective, although I would certainly sell some of the singles in that set. The distribution of the cards, and I would say the value curve in Flesh and Blood is much different than it was in Magic, which was also a cool thing about Magic because it wasn't like feast or famine. And Flesh and Blood, from what I've seen, can be very much feast or famine. But when you feast, boy, you get full up. The other thing I'm sort of interested in too is sorcery. More for the art than anything else, because from what I've seen of the cards, the art is just absolutely fantastic. But it sounds like there's been some manufacturing issues, distribution issues, transportation issues. They're coming from New Zealand and all that kind of stuff. So we'll see. But what I need to do at the moment is to liquidate some of the inventory that I've currently got on hand so that I can potentially get into some of these other card games, either for collectability or for reselling singles online. I just think the whole ecosystem is really, really fascinating. And actually, that brings me to something that I saw earlier today, where Rob over at RNG Games was talking about changing his business model because the singles that he's buying, whether it's, high dollar singles or whether it's a collection, they're all dropping in price. And so he was mentioning that 85% of what he would consider that side of his inventory, high dollar singles and collections, 85% of that inventory has lost value because of the card prices coming down. And so he's having to change the way that he runs his business, and he's thinking about being the closeout man, which is to say when you have a distributor that's going to have, this product that they're trying to fire sale, whether it's Baldur's Gate or Midnight Hunt or something like that, it's got to get it out the door, and he's the guy that's going to come behind and clean all that stuff up and liquidate it as fast as he can. And it's interesting that he said that, because I sort of viewed myself that way when I was selling the singles. The modern sets, I noticed that when they would come out, the price would be up here for the sealed product. Let's say it would be $120 for set boosters, because that's what I would buy. When the set booster boxes first came out, it'd be like $120. And then over time, it would just sit there and sort of taper off until I could get these boxes for like $90. If I could get them for $90 shipped, that was ideal, because I tried to keep my cost basis around 25 cents a card, which is why I would list singles for no less than 25 cents a card on the online platforms. And between that minimum and the extra juice that was in some of the high dollar cards, I made sort of an initial investment in buying sealed product with the idea that I was going to crack it and sort the different cards out, sell the ones online that I could, put the bulk to the side, and have it pay for itself. And that's exactly what happened. I was really surprised at the volume that I was able to generate, and I was amazed that the hobby could essentially pay for itself. I didn't have to add any more dollars into it. It just kind of continued to roll, of its own accord. Now, I got out of it, like I said, at the end of June because it just became such a time sink. I have a full time job, and I was spending 20 to 25 hours a week fulfilling cards, opening packs, listing them on the platforms, photographing the cards, and while it was paying for itself, it wasn't paying me. So I just kind of decided that, I was going to need to take that time and use it for something a little bit more productive. But like I say, I'm sitting on all this inventory. The prices are kind of coming down, so I won't be able to realize as much of a gain from that inventory as I would have otherwise, which is fine. But I'm also thinking that with that liquidated inventory, either buying into a different game that has a more reasonable ecosystem at the moment, perhaps more reasonable leadership that's steering the product in a rational way, or potentially using it to buy collections, believe it or not, either collections or singles for my own collection. And I've actually got some singles that came in the mail recently. I have 3 different shipments that have come in since the last sort of unboxing video that I did, or I guess what I called the card intake video. And I'm going to film another one of those with these new cards shortly. But I guess to wrap it up, that's all I wanted to say. Is it was kind of an insight that I had when I was reviewing the price of these bulk cards after being away from it for, several months, and just noticing the decline, not affecting only the high dollar cards, but affecting the bulk cards as well, and what that's going to do to the bulk sellers, who rely on sort of that floor of 5 cents per card. And they can't even get that because a 1-2 cent card on TCG Player is essentially worthless. You know, they're not going to let you list. In fact, I think the platform prohibits you listing a card that's free. So you have to put a penny on it. And essentially what that means is nobody's going to buy the damn thing. Nobody's in the market for that card. And when there's a vibrant player community, of the cheap cards will still sell because people want to fill out their decks. Especially if it's for a set that's, a couple years old, 2 or 3 years old. So, yeah, all the decisions that are being made by Wizards of the Coast right now, I think, are just really poor. It's demonstrably true, I think, that the people in charge are completely out of touch, number one, with the game, number two, with the player community, and number three, with the ecosystem that had been built up around the collectability aspect over time. And it's hurting everybody, really. And it's going to hurt WotC too. In the short term, maybe their numbers are great, and they're sort of scraping the bottom of the barrel, I think, by linking Magic to all of these third-party properties like Doctor Who and Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, that's like, a cocaine addict doing a line. Sure, it's going to feel good and it's going to juice you up in the short term, but then you got to do it again, and it's got to be bigger, and you got to have more. It's just, at some point, that's going to crash and burn. So, anyway, those are my thoughts for right now. If you've watched this long, I certainly thank you for your time. Hope maybe it was informative. But we'll see you in the next one.